Hello, 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 and welcome to the newest episode of Borderline Podcast Disorder. And oh my God, what a week it has been! Firstly, I want to say thank you to everyone listening to this because we got through top 50 podcast of the month on Goodpods, which is still incredible, and I'm very, very grateful for it. And I also had a couple of weeks ago, or I think even last week, I might have told you that I was ill and had to go to hospital because of my headaches and everything. And I had the result of my MRI and CT scan, and it looks good. Luckily, I'm doing okay. It's nothing worse than. I mean, it's still a bit frustrating, but it's nothing that can't be treated, and that's great. That's brilliant news. I'm really happy with that. Now, I've been doing quite okay, I guess, mentally this week, but also that's mostly because I stopped using my phone, at least not my phone, but social media. I've not been around almost at all. I think I only got my notifications turned on, but unless someone's messaging me, I'm not that active, and that's kind of helped me. I think just not seeing posts and not seeing stuff and isolating myself a little bit in that respect helped me out massively. I've read quite a bit this week. I finished a book actually, which was great. It's called Ask a Footballer. It's James Milner's book. He played for Man City and Liverpool, and he's at Brighton now. It was a great book. He seemed like a very genuine guy. But again, I don't know. I've never met him, so I wouldn't. I wouldn't know what to say, but anyway, from what I gauged in the book, he seemed pretty cool, and I really enjoyed reading it. Now I am starting reading something called Irina's Gift, and I guess we're gonna start doing reviews on that. No, it would not, but I think I've been really. I've been thinking a lot about a lot of stuff, and where I'm at as a comedian and everything, because by the time this comes out, so on Monday, I'll be on 298 gigs down, which is quite an achievement. I think sometimes I feel like it's not enough. But I've started comedy over 2 years ago. And I've been doing it in Manchester. Then I came to London, and then last year, it's been such a year filled with so many ups and downs. It was just ridiculous. I think the amount of times that I fell ill for one reason or another, it was just it's just hard to. I think it was hard for me not to get annoyed, and I got annoyed with myself so many times for allowing myself to be in that position where I get so ill. It's either a cold, either the headaches, and it turns out, it's because of an issue with my nose. One of the nose pipes, it's not as thick as the other, and so it not damages, but I can't breathe as much as I guess I should. So now I have to take some sprays every morning, which apparently is meant to, I don't know, loosen up. I'm not a doctor, okay? I'm not. I've been told. I think my doctor tried to explain to me what's happened. He's a wonderful doctor, by the way. Very good guy. An Arsenal fan, sadly, but besides of that, he's a good guy. No, I'm just messing. But he was a brilliant guy. And then but as he was talking, obviously I was derailing, and in my head I thought, I guess Now I have to think about like, my will maybe, I have to think about, who's going to pay, the bills moving on, or like who's going to look after the funeral costs and everything. And maybe I should have listened more to him and less to the voice in my head. But I think that's something that I have to actively work on. I'm pretty sure I did mention last week that I had a chat with my psychiatrist, and he was a little bit worried about the anxiety score. Even though I don't feel anxious, I feel like I get more emotional at times, but I also manage to regulate it better, and that's to do with the DBT skills, I think, because I've been on different types of like medication and stuff, but I don't think I've ever been able to not give in to my impulses and my emotions. And I've actually had I got to the point now where, following the conversation with Ruby last week, I talked about a couple of friends that I've met within the week about the episode, and then we started talking about like my me dabbling around with like heavy alcohol consumptions and drugs and stuff like that, and it was quite. I managed to see it in a fairly funny way, and I can deal with it, and I'm very happy about it. But you've got a great you got a great guest coming for you today. I met Zoe at a gig a couple of months ago. Actually, no, I'm lying. First time I met Zoe, she was a judge in a gong show in South London at the Big Belly Comedy Club. And I think she liked my stuff. I don't know. I hope so. At least she seemed like it on the night. Like she didn't, she wasn't harsh. I got through. I didn't win the night, but I got through the whole 5 minutes, and that's how we met. We didn't speak much though. However, we met a couple of months ago at a gig, and that's where we chatted a bit more, and we. I got to invite her on this, and yeah, she came through. She came through. We recorded, and you're up for a great episode. And again, she's a great comedian. Her social media is going to be in the bio of this episode, and please make sure you check it out. And yeah, I hope you enjoy, folks. And for any feedback at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, either on my social media or the email address that's on the bio of the episode again, or on the bio of the podcast. And I've got something cool coming up for all the listeners soon. I'll probably announce it at the end of this actually, but yeah. Let's crack on with the episode now. Right, so Zoe, hello and welcome. How are you?
I'm well. I'm really good. I've had a good morning. How are you?
Nice. I'm good, thank you. I was trying to get the office ready. It's not. I mean, I hope you find this clean, because it wasn't this clean.
It's very clean. It's a very clean. Looks like the carpet's been vacuumed. It's a very clean office.
Yeah, I did. Well, I just vacuumed right
impressed.
before you came in. Thank you. And yeah, it was boxes everywhere. And we moved in like 3 months ago, but somehow we still have still have boxes.
That's fucked up. You gotta get rid of the box. I get rid of the boxes day one.
Really?
Oh yeah, I unpack and people think it's kind of a bit mental, but like I nest day one. Boxes out. I'm setting up little corners with like little knickknacks on the shelves. Yeah, because I hate the feeling of like not being settled. So like the move out, the move in, yeah. I want that to be in like a 12-hour window max. Like everything's packed up in like 5 hours, and then everything's unpacked in like 3 hours. Like give me a little weed and a cup of coffee, and I'll have my apartment like lived in.
Wow.
In like 8 hours. Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's a weird skill.
Well, I do find it very impressive, and I think I just like can't, because we still have shelves to come that we ordered.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah, so that
where did you order the? Oh, right, you have this like crazy furniture stuff you've shown me. Yeah. So where are the shelves coming from?
I think someone in Croatia is putting it together.
That's incredible.
It's Etsy, so it's not like expensive. It's just that they manufacture it.
That's great. I mean, I just buy all my shit from IKEA, so I think that's
we
really
do
good.
have some IKEA stuff in here, but it's some, especially like I'll show you after. I'll give you a tour, but you know the corners where we have like little. Again, the walls are say weird, or like the corner furniture we want to get it like sized.
Modular.
Yeah, and that's what IKEA doesn't offer.
No, they do not.
But besides of that, I love IKEA. I'm such an
it's just easy. Like I don't drive or have any means of like doing anything like going to like a lumber yard. I don't have tools. IKEA has it all for me. I can take the bus there and like have them ship stuff. I mean, it's a single girl's dream, I gotta say.
Well, I think it's a dream for any. We got the couch of IKEA, and I mean, it took us like 2 hours to put it together, but
That's
still,
impressive.
But then we had a coffee table. I'll show you. It's like a marble coffee table, and we picked it up in an Uber XL.
I'm sure he was really happy about that.
Oh, he wasn't. Yeah, and. Oh my God, he was
that's
a
how
nightmare.
that's how you tank your rating on Uber.
Yeah, but
Bro
it's fine.
probably gave you like 1 star.
It was through my partner, so it's
Nice.
not
Well
my
done.
problem. And also, luckily, she's not listening to this, so she's not gonna know that I talked about that. But yeah, no. So we had, and then we used those. Like, have you ever seen? There are like some straps that you put on to lift furniture.
Yes. Yeah.
We had to use me and my partner. We had to use this to get because it's a huge piece of marble to get it up the stairs.
That's a steep stairwell too.
Yeah, and we were like tied together with this marble thing in between, and it was hilarious. I think if any of the neighbors saw us, they had
it's a real test of your
yeah.
love.
And then yesterday, these IKEA folks came through and they just like dropped everything off, and I was like, oh God. So easy.
Yeah. They come, they do it. Did they build it for you or no?
No. We
That's some bougie shit. I don't get like people paying. It's because it's not cheap. It's like usually like $100 for them to set it up, and they're gonna like stay in your house and like build some furniture.
Yeah.
Like I can't. Who are you, the Prince of France? Like fuck off. That's crazy. Build your own IKEA furniture.
As well as I think it's because I have this thing where, you know, if I have like builders or stuff like that, I remember when my mom we used to have like people coming over to like fix stuff, and you know, you'd have to like prepare lunch for them, and you know, you'd like get them coffee. And but to me, it's too much.
Yeah,
I don't want
agree.
to know about like dietary requirements.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, I generally, I think we had someone the other day, and they were like, oh, you know, sometimes I ask out of like politeness, or tea or coffee. Obviously, to you, it's a different thing.
I mean, now I feel bad about the
coffee.
No.
Is
that all right?
Yeah, because you are in a different, you know, social group.
You haven't yet asked me to build any furniture, so I'm assuming it's okay. I'm not in that category.
Yeah, but sometimes I think I had because I had the groundkeeper from here coming in to check some stuff, and a part of me was like, I hope he says no, and he just goes away, and then he didn't.
And he hung out, and he's still here. He lives here now.
Yeah, that's actually his room.
that's that man that's been staring at me this entire time. Cool.
But yeah, no. Well, besides of that, I'm glad you enjoyed this. You've got a lot of you know, you got a new show, right, coming up.
Yeah.
How's that been?
You know, it's been weird. So I feel kind of new to the UK. I've been here 2 years, but like it's a new comedy environment I'm not really used to. Back home in Canada, we don't so much focus on the hour-long comedy show. Like, unless you're super famous and like doing specials on TV, you're more focused on your like tight 20. Like that's the goal. And once you do that, you get a new tight 20 and you're touring with that ideally, or even a half hour. But like the hour that's a mountain that few people try to climb where I come from. But here it's kind of like, if you consider yourself a pro comic, you have to have an hour. You have to be able to be on stage for an hour. It seems like the comics who have been going as long as I have in this scene here, they've all done their debuts. They've all done their hour at Fringe. And so I was putting it off when I first got here. And now I'm kind of like, I guess I have to do this. And it's not even so like such a drag. I'm making it sound like it's such a drag. It's intimidating. I think it's really intimidating to spend an hour with people on stage and not have like a host to rely on or like another act or like something else. But I've done it. I think I've done it like 5 times now, like work in progress shows. And I love it. It's like a new venture for me. There's like storytelling and a bit of like sort of like vulnerability that I'm not really used to as a comic. And it's been really nice. Like I now I'm in a kind of a funky space where I'm like, I'm doing my previews and I'm doing my club set. And I like just don't want to do my club set anymore because those jokes, not only are those jokes kind of old, but they're like really a different version of me as a performer. Like super confident. I know what I'm talking about. I know exactly where this is going. I know where I'm going to get the laugh. And in the hour, it's like, I don't know. Maybe you're going to get it. Maybe you're not. And that's okay. And like, that's been really fun. Sorry, I just spoke for like 8 minutes without stopping.
Well, no, that's the whole idea, by the way. Of yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts about it.
That sounds incredible. I mean, it sounds brilliant because I also. Again, I also see comedy, or like I see the hour is like such a huge commitment as well, because I've seen some like hour-long shows where you think this can be easily 30 minutes.
Totally. Yeah, I'm like, you didn't need to do that for a whole hour. You could have been such a good 15-minute set.
So you see, and then I also noticed, like, for example, I haven't watched the new Pete Davidson special, but I've seen his old one, and he had like a 45 minutes. And then I've seen some other comedians, even again the ones who post. I think Nate Bargatze as well. He only had like a 40 or 45 minutes. It was like, it kind of makes sense because again, I'd rather So that I agree. I think it's such a, and especially because I don't have the experience of doing it out. No. Besides of like a couple of gigs in Romania, I've never lived in a different country and do comedy.
Yeah.
However, growing up with American comedy and then doing comedy in England, I do find it very strange where, people are like, oh, I'm taking my show to the Edinburgh Fringe. And I'm like, an hour?
Yeah. You? Really?
Well, not no, it's not necessarily like that. But it's more of an hour. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, totally. It's hard to kind of like wrap your head around it. And yeah, I was joking. It's not even like, oh, you're not good enough to do an hour. It's just like, wow, that's so ambitious. That's so ambitious, especially like I'm also really learning the sort of this is going to sound super bougie, but like the class system of comedians. So it's like the open micers, the amateurs, the mids, the pros, like it's really quite leveled here. And it's kind of awesome to see like a younger comic, maybe they've been gigging for like 3 years, don't have an agent, they're not doing the clubs, but they're going to Fringe with an hour and like super ambitious to try and make that work and not necessarily be so worried about the consequences on your career, if that makes sense. Like, that's my problem right now, is because I've been gigging for like 10,000 years and I'm so self-conscious of like, fuck, if I do an hour, it has to be great, because I feel, whether it's real or it's in my head, I feel like there is a bit of sort of an expectation that like, she's an older comic, she's been going for longer, if she's going to shoot for it and miss, like that's the end of her career. So it's a bit, I'm putting more pressure on myself than I need to probably.
I was going to say that you say that, but I'm not going to say whose special I watched the other day on, because I was flying back to England. And again, I looked at it, and it's a very good comedian, but the hour wasn't, again, an hour.
You're not going to say who it is?
No, I'm not going to say who they are. But I hope somehow it makes you go, I think the pressure that we put on ourselves, it's like the worst.
Crazy.
Yeah, because you think to you, it's because you're the closest to it. it has the biggest impact. You're like, oh fuck, what am I gonna do with this?
No one cares.
Yeah,
like,
and
no one's watching the way that I think that they're watching.
Yeah.
Except for like my parents, and they love me. So like it's stupid that like I have this expectation of myself. But it's funny, like the big concern right now, we just touched on it, is like, I want to make sure that it takes me an hour to do something, because like this idea of like, well, that what you just did could be a 10-minute set. Like that's what I get really anxious about. And in the last preview that I did, it was shorter. It was only 42 minutes. Usually it's been 54 minutes. But it was like I was out of things to say. I was like, cool, I don't need to keep these people hostage. I'm done. They had a good time. And it's, I'm early enough in my sort of progress of the show where I don't feel like if it's under an hour, like they're going to want their money back. No, it's definitely more in a place of like, I want there to be urgency. I want there to be excitement. And I don't ever want them to be like, okay, like I'm kind of bored with this and I want to go home, and what's for dinner, and like how are we, which tube line are we going to take, and where's the bus going to take us? Like that's my greatest fear, is that what you said, it's like, well, that could have been a 20-minute set. Ugh. I cringe even thinking about that. Because how many times have we seen this,
Yeah.
Even in like an HBO special where you're like, what? You got to do an HBO special with this? What are you talking about?
This is what I think, and that's what I was thinking about as well. Like, where do you, how much do you rely on, I guess, crowd work, within the hour? Again, without giving anything, I'm just curious.
Yeah. Not much right now. I gotta say, like I throw a couple kind of questions to the audience at some points, but it's more just like it's a cheat. It's like I just want your attention. I don't actually want an answer. They're rhetorical questions.
Right.
I am constantly inspired when I go and watch an hour and the comic does like a nice 10 minutes of crowd work to open it up. It's so brave, and it's like a really good hook to get people in. That's my goal eventually, because I think it's like, we're going to sit together for an hour and I'm just going to pretend that you're not there. Like, that's ridiculous. I want to know who's in the room, and I'm still going to do my hour, but I at least want to, a kind of an understanding of like, especially with the themes of my show being around like romance and love and relationships. If I've got a room of like single 20-year-olds, it's going to be a different show than a room of like coupled people in their 50s. By the way, I love couples in their 50s. Please come to my show. Best audiences. So yeah, I'm like kind of trying to work up to that, where I can just come into the room and be like, all right, like who's here? What are we doing? But it's a risk, because so many times, and not necessarily in like hour-long shows, but I've like just seen consistently in London, an MC will do really tight crowd work, and then they won't do any material, and then they'll bring up the first comic, and the comic might be great, but they bomb because it's material, and the audience is only used to crowd work, and they're like, well, I don't want to see this written stuff. Like, give us the improv, give us the banter. So yeah, it's an exciting challenge for me to be like, how can I do that with confidence, and then sort of ease into, okay, now here's the show. I don't know. We'll see. I have a preview on Saturday, and I'm gonna, if I sell any tickets, I'm gonna try that at the show.
That is that's a very interesting point, because I actually, in my head, or like I guess my preference, when I watch it, and when I'm like, oh my god, I'm amazed, it's actually when comedians don't do the crowd work for an hour, and I'm like, oh my god, the fact that you take someone's attention, you're like,
but
for
that's
1
so
hour.
Crazy.
Exactly. No, and it's not to say again one is right or the other is, again, one's wrong or right. It's just that to me that's more when I'm like, oh my god, that's wild. To just
truly
start
universal
talking,
material. Yeah, totally.
And then you stop talking, and that's it.
Yeah.
While when I don't know, I'm just curious, because I see also with I see like again comedy shows, again I don't tend to see them on TV. It's probably from people who I know from the circuit, that sometimes they just take hour-long shows, which is just crowd work. Like they do a show on the idea that they'll have people in the crowd, and then just like, take basically get the ideas from them, and then we'll just like riff on whatever. And
the Matt Rife
to me,
effect.
it's amazing. Still,
yeah,
it's mind blowing in a sense. But then I don't know how, I don't know what. And also, I think is it like an English thing maybe to, because again, at least like, yeah, growing up, I've never seen crowd work. You know, like you'd always see Romanian comedians, American comedians, just I'm here to do this. And then I don't, or is it all over the world? It just changed like this? Or what do you think?
I think it's now sort of a global phenomenon. I don't think it started necessary. I think it probably started in the States because that's just where most things start in terms of comedy. But I don't think that like, I think it's just now because of TikTok and Instagram, it's kind of everywhere. And I have like a love-hate relationship with this sort of like crowd work phenomenon that's happening. Like, you know, Matt Rife and all these other comics, Mark Norman, like Sam Morrill, like they do this sort of, it seems like seamless crowd work. But there are tricks to that. There are ways to prepare for that, even though it looks like improv, that I don't necessarily, I can't do, like, it's not a skill in my toolbox. It's not something that I can tap into. And I like crowd work. I like doing a bit of crowd work, but I find it hard to sometimes jump in and jump out of, because it's like, if the room doesn't like me, if the crowd work doesn't hit, then the material that I've prepared will suffer. Whereas I'm confident about most of my jokes. So it's like, if I just do that, it's not a guarantee, but it's like I feel more confident in it and I have more of like an engine running. There have been enough times where I've done crowd work where it's like really fallen flat. And then to switch into jokes, it's like, well, you're really not going to like this now. Like, we've just proven that that I'm not able to riff off of you. And now it's going to look like so over-prepared that I've written these jokes, if that makes sense. So I don't know. Like, it really is. Like, I'm keen to try with the hour because it's a work in progress. And it's like, you know, the crowd work will be a work in progress and the jokes are a work in progress. And maybe that could be like a nice sort of like synergistic flow. But I don't know if it'll be a part of the show in the end. Like, I'm not sure if you saw Patty Young's show last year, Hungry, Horny, Scared.
No, I know he toured with Dan Tiernan.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen.
So it's a great hour, and I mean, I've only seen it once, but I think it's every show he does this. He does a dedicated amount of crowd work off the top, and it's like, it's so impressive because how do you know what you're gonna get? And then you have a whole nother like 50 minutes with them after that. And I think in some circumstances it can really put the audience at ease and give them a sense of like, all right, I trust this person. They're here with me. They're listening to me. And now I'm going to listen to them. There's that sort of like handshake agreement.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. But like the last time I did crowd work was at City Comedy in Shoreditch at Trapeze. And I like said out loud, it was like 6 minutes into like a very mediocre set. And I said out loud, I was like, oh, what am I going to do next? And then a guy in the audience was like, what about telling a joke? I was like, I hate you. I hate you so much. And they all booed him. And then they all felt bad for me. And I was trying to be like, no, let's hear him out. Like I was trying to keep it fun and not make it like feel bad for me. And it just got more and more sad. And then he was like, yeah, I just don't like it when female comedians talk about sex. And I was like,
wow.
Oh, no. And then they really didn't like that. It's just, it can, you know, if you're not prepared, which I wasn't. I think it was like it had been a while since I'd done a club set, and it was just like, oh, I look like such a freaking amateur. Because truly, like, that kind of a heckle is a gift. If you're worth your salt as a comedian, like, take that and run. What an opportunity. But I just got intimidated and was like, I'm a scared little girl, and I've only been doing stand up for a year. That's what it sounded like. So there's moments, you know, in this business where you're like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, but then I think in that situation, how did you get ready for that? You know, like, it's not as if you have, because that's sometimes, and you don't, oh, if someone says this, then that's going to be my reply. And I don't even think with stuff like this, which is like, it's just happening right now. I don't even think it's the case of how long you've been, you know, in comedy for, because you can get like taken by surprise you can have people who've been, and also I feel like there was, I think at least last year, there was a trend of people actually trying to pick fights and like have them
totally.
on the record. And I was like, I'm not for that as well, because you know, again, like, realistically, if you heckle a comedian, you're a prick, I think, regardless of how bad it is, because, you know, I know they are there, you're not. If you don't like it, just go out, you know?
Yeah. I'm kind of two minds, you know, like I agree with you. Like you can't, it's not like you can like prepare responses and like whip them out at any time. But I do believe that if you've been going for, you know, X amount of years, it's not having a prepared comeback. It's like you are relaxed on stage.
Yeah.
You are so used to being on stage with a microphone that you are just relaxed. And in that state of relaxation, you're able to think. You're able to be quick. You're able to respond. So it's really not like I have all these witty comebacks in my back pocket. It's more just like, I'm here with you now. I'm not scared when you speak. I'm present, and we can have an exchange. And more so, you don't know what it's like to be the center of attention, but I do. And so I'm kind of ready, and I don't have responses ready, but my brain is sharp enough that I'm able to respond. Years and years and years of smoking weed has slowed down that mechanism in my brain. So it's like something I truly have to work at, where it's like, you know, before I go up on stage, I don't know if you like pray or have a mantra or like whatever your pre-show warm up is. But for me, it's like, okay, you're on stage. You're going on stage now. Like I have to literally be like, you're going on stage. You're not going to have a chat with someone. You're going on stage, be in the moment. Don't forget to have fun. Like I have to say these things out loud or like whisper them to myself, because you know, when you've been gigging 5 times a week for 10 years, it can kind of, the lines can get really blurred. But that sharpness, like that's the difference between a good comic and a great comic, I think, is like being able to just, you're not like a soldier ready to shoot at someone, but you're a person ready to have a conversation if that's what it comes to. And like people say, fuck hecklers, like people shouldn't heckle at comedy clubs. And like you shouldn't, like I've prepared material for you and I'd like to say these jokes. That would be great. But we have agreed that we're in an environment, you've been drinking. I'm talking about current topics like political issues that might be controversial, and I'm trying to incite a reaction. And if the reaction is so intense that you feel the need to verbalize, are we really going to say like, get out of here, how dare you? It's like, no, like I can kind of understand it sometimes. Okay. That guy was an asshole, but like, there is a big divide, I think, in the States, especially between like, comedy clubs that are easy to kill in and like rooms that are really hard to kill in because the audiences are so verbal. And it's like, I would rather be able to kill in those rooms, like, and do my jokes, but also like be in the room. Because we're not philosophers, but we are, we are commentators, you know? And like, when you look at like sports or any other arena of like critique or commenting, like people, there's discourse, there's a conversation, like those, like those pundits, there's 4 of them, and they fight, they argue, they have comebacks. With stand up, there's only one of us, but it's like the audience is the other person, the audience is the panel. Right. And I don't know, I would like to think that like some of my jokes would get people thinking. Maybe like that's a lot to ask. But like, if your brain is working while I'm speaking, I'm very happy.
Oh, okay. That's a very interesting point. And that's a very interesting way to look at it. And I think, I see what you're saying. And I got it. Because it's, again, look, it's not a right and a wrong. Again, it's more of a, you deal with, that was a very good ideology where it's like, well, that's still a way of participating. Again, sometimes people are being assholes, but sometimes you kind of, that means that they are actually it's working with you. Because they are expecting, or like they want to see something and they are paying attention. You're like, oh shit, okay. Yeah. Cool. There you go. Oh,
yeah. Like, and I'm asking for it, you know, like I'm saying something and okay, they're jokes. Like I have some fucked up jokes that I don't like believe in actually. They're just jokes. But your reaction to it, Karen's reaction to it is like, that's why I'm doing it. I'm trying to elicit a response. I would like ideally the response would be laughter, but this day and age, especially with clip comedy being so saturated with crowd work, people feel entitled to have a verbalized opinion. And like you see it now, I don't love it. You see it now a lot in clubs where like the MC does crowd work and the crowd work goes on like a little bit too long. Like it's like, where are you from? What do you do? Who's your partner? What's your partner's name? And it's just like, is there going to be a joke at any point? But you can see they're kind of trying to find a moment.
Yeah.
And what's worse is that the audiences are now trained for that. They're like, yeah, I want it. Or like, I know where this is going because I'm on Instagram and I see these clip comedy bits and I want to participate. I want to be the next whatever. And it's just like, I don't think that's stand up. That's more like improv. I don't know, like it's a weird mutation, I think. I don't want to be like negative, but I was listening to an episode of Working It Out, Mark Birbiglia's podcast, and he was talking about this like with Pete Holmes, and they were talking about how it's not ruining stand up, but it is like it's kind of taking the magic out of it a little bit. Like we've prepared something. Here's the analogy. Pete Holmes says it's like, okay, if we got on an airplane and the pilot was going to drive the plane, but then somebody else volunteered to drive the plane. It's like, but no, the pilot should drive the plane. The pilot came prepared to drive the plane, fly the plane, drive the plane. I don't fucking know. And it's the same with, it's not life threatening with stand up, I suppose. But it's like, no, all these people paid to watch a comedian, not like an audience person talk about their boring ass job in finance. Like, kill me now. It's maybe 3% of the time it's interesting, and the other 97% of the time it's like Diane's anniversary with her husband and they're here for comedy. And I'm so sad that I know that now. Like I don't want to know. I came here to get away from reality.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about you, but like I don't go to a lot of comedy shows. Like I've never been a huge comedy fan. I found comedy through theater, and like I watch comedy now, but mostly when I'm on a show or if I'm seeing a pro. Like I don't go to like a lot of amateur nights or club nights unless I'm on the bill. And it's kind of for that reason, because it's like I don't want to suffer through endless awkward crowd work. I'll go see a pro comic, like Maria Bamford was here last year and I went to see her, and like anytime someone's in London, like I want to make the effort, but it's agonizing. Audiences are spoiled. We've spoiled them a little. I'm scared.
Well, to me, I like watching comedy, but I don't go out of my way to watch comedy.
Yeah.
Like I think, for example, because you did mention before, like Matt Rife, I haven't watched the special yet, just because I watched the Ricky Gervais one just because I was like curious, and it made me more like, oh, okay, let's see. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
But yeah, like sometimes I do watch comedy. I'm the same, I think, unless there is like a pro, or if it's someone who I know who has like, say, a work in progress, and they're like, oh, if you want to go, I'll be like, if I don't have something on, I will, because why not? It's again, because I still feel like it's more of a, I see it as a, but it might sound, but a chore in a way, where I'm like, you know what? I'm being supportive to someone that rather than, I'm going to watch comedy. So I do have I do have a very fine line between, because I now, even though again I'm at amateur level, comedy wise, but I still see it as a job. I still see it as I treat it as a job. Like I write every day. I think of all these, like, which we're going to talk about later as well, like with social media and stuff. And I want to also have the time to not do that, if that makes sense. Because that makes me enjoy it more.
Yeah.
When I go now, for example, if I sit down and write, then I'm like, I gotta write because that's my time writing. And again, sometimes if, say, like yesterday I was on a run and a joke came in, I was like, okay, cool, I need to remember it. I need to put it like on some. I will still consider it, but I wouldn't go like, I need to watch every special. I need to watch every. And even like with some comedians who I absolutely adore, I haven't watched their latest work just because I'm like, no, I'd rather watch something else.
Yeah, it's funny, like watching watching comedy for me, like the last year has unfortunately there's been a lot of hate watching. Like I'll watch a special to be like, this person better not still be funny. Like I can't handle that. Are you kidding me? Like I watched Sarah Silverman's new special. She put it last year and I liked it. It wasn't the best that she's done. I did laugh, but I was just like, and this is so toxic, but in my brain I was like, no, there can't be too many funny women. Like, oh no, like there's not enough space. Like that's so fucking nasty. But like, it's funny you mentioned Ricky Gervais. Like, I feel like a lot of people are watching Ricky Gervais' special and Dave Chappelle's special being like, I just want to see the controversy. Like, I don't even care about the jokes. Like, I'm just in it to hear what shitty things that they're saying. And I think that like the more and more comedians present themselves as like public figures as opposed to just like artists or comics, like what are we devouring their content for? Like, is it to have a laugh or is it to be like up on the latest Twitter gossip, you know?
Well, you see, I think in that it's such because I'm in two. Again, I think I'm in both boats, I guess, if I had to split myself. Because in one hand, I watched Ricky Gervais, and I was like, you know what? Not bad. Like, again, and also I think, if anything, in my head, the previous one and the one before that were, let's say, more offensive, or it was a bit more, I'm not sure. While in here, he kind of like drew a line in a sense of like, this is a joke. This is an idea. This is a fiction. It's not real, you know. And I was like, okay, fair enough. While in the other hand, with Dave Chappelle, and I think I was heartbroken because he was one of the reasons why I started doing comedy. And then, look, I understand the tool that, you know, his friend's suicide like took on him, but I was like, just let it go, you know. In my head, I was like, just like bury it, you know, let it. Again, grieve, you know, have every single right, but just let it go. And I treat it differently, because now with Dave Chappelle, I'm like, I'm not interested, and I agree with you. I feel like I'm not interested in seeing the drama behind it. We say with Matt Rife, you know, I was like, I don't know. I want to watch Ricky Gervais because I'm just curious. It made me curious to see his jokes. While with Dave Chappelle and Matt Rife, I was like, it just sounds like a lot of drama, and I think the thing is nowadays it works. Like that's like you said it before, you know, where people I don't know whether people they would consume comedy because they actually want to see comedy, or they want to go, ooh, I wonder what's the next, you know, arguably like what's the word, politically incorrect thing that's going to come. And that's not comedy, because if it in my head is like, if it makes you. Because I'm all for getting an idea of, oh, that's a lesson, or, you know, I learned something, fine. But then if you go, actually, I think being like more worked up after you watch something, then unfortunately I feel like instead of building your like serotonin, is it serotonin? Anyway, building that level of like happiness in your brain, then if it doesn't activate that to me, then I'm like, well, again, it's still something. It's public speaking, wonderful. You know, it's a TED Talk of some sort, but it's not...
But it's annoying. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Chappelle, same here. Like, it was definitely one of the reasons I started doing stand-up. I saw him live in Toronto when I was a little baby, and like, he was amazing. It was 2.5 hours. Then he came and did like another half-hour encore. Like, it was an incredible show. And then I saw him again in Montreal, and like, just the bigness of him, you know, he holds space, and he went so smoothly between like, you know, jokes and politics and like just being there in the moment and smoking cigarettes. Like, it was just the sort of artistry of it was just so amazing to watch. And then, you know, like lately I'm just like, you're on the wrong side. I'm sorry, but like, I don't really care what your politics are anymore at this point. Like, you're just doing this to be sensational, and it's fucking boring. Like, your jokes are not funny. You're holding on to this transphobia like so hard, and it's like, all right, cool. You've identified yourself as that. Then write some jokes about it at least. Like, don't just shout about it. Don't make these outrageous claims and these like really long-winded jokes that aren't really jokes. They're kind of just rants. And and expect like your comedy fans to follow you. And it's crazy because it's like he does these specials to these big rooms, these big theaters, and they fucking love him. And it just more and more, it sounds like he's just like running a MAGA rally. Like it doesn't even sound like a January 6th rally. Like it's really, I find it quite creepy. And unfortunately, like a really accurate representation of like America right now, where it's like, if your soapbox is tall enough and if you are outrageous enough, you will find a massive niche audience. Russell Brand's another great example of that. Like, you know, before that documentary came out, he was so massive online and had like millions of followers because he's a psychopath. And then the documentary comes out, and I think a lot of people in comedy were expecting something to happen for him to, I don't know, go to jail or for there to be a trial. And I don't know about you, but I haven't heard fucking zip from that scenario at all.
Yeah, I was just thinking
and I think it's because he like has this crazy huge following of psychos who probably have just helped bury this story. And obviously I'm not comparing Chappelle to Russell Brand, because Chappelle might be like transphobic and shitty, but he's not, as far as I know, a rapist. But it's interesting to me that like if you have a following of like paranoid psychopaths, you can do anything. Like you can do anything in America, you can do anything in the UK. Like terrifying.
Well, talk about like followers as well. It's like such a huge example of, you know, if you have followers, then you already get to be treated so much more differently. And also, you know, I've noticed this thing where when people say they don't like to, like nobody likes to be told that they are wrong. I feel like now you can actually see it where if say, because I've seen it, for example, as well with like, and the fact that he lives in Romania is not helpful, but like Andrew Tate, right? Where people were like, oh my God, this guy has got like whatever perspective. And then when things come out about like the darker side of that person, people are still like, no. You like, he's still in a, no, except the fact that again, like I found it, for example, at the moment with like Joe Rogan, right? I love Joe Rogan, the UFC, you know, I think he's the best pundit, you know, that UFC has. Yeah. I think I enjoy some of the conversation he has with people that he invites over. I don't necessarily think he's a nice person. And I accept that. You know, I wouldn't go to hell and back for him or Dave Chappelle. Again, I watched like old Dave Chappelle stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, this is brilliant. But unfortunately, I got to the point where I'm like, I don't necessarily agree. And I feel like there are so many people, which again, sometimes I think when I talk, like I had the conversation with comedians about like Louis C.K., you know, like his comeback. And I was like, he's still, you know, he's still a, I don't know what to say because I don't want to. Again, he's still
an amazing joke writer. I'm sorry, like it's terrible for me to say that, but like also another reason I started stand up. He's an incredible joke writer. His specials are great. It fucking sucks that he's a creep, but like that's the reality that we're living in.
You see, that's the thing. He's a creep, and then I was chatting and I was like, oh yeah, but you know, he's like, again, sometimes. He got away with it just because he's a brilliant writer. Yeah. And like, no, let's not forget the fact that he's a creep.
We can hold two things in the same hand, though. Yeah. We can honestly, and it's funny, like when I compare Chappelle to Louis C.K., it's like, man, like two mammoths of comedy, two like literally institutions of comedy, of stand-up. And, you know, we choose to sort of villainize Louis C.K. because of his behavior. And we should. That shit should not be condoned in comedy, especially in such a male-dominated industry. But he continues to show up for work and write and tour and be a comedian. Whereas with Chappelle, it's like, you know, I don't think he's badly behaving, but his material sucks. Like, I'm sorry, but like, it doesn't make me laugh anymore. I was a huge fan. I always supported him. I always you know, it was my dream to meet him and perform on one of his shows, like always. But I watch him now and like, or his SNL monologue last year. And it's just like, dude sounds like an angry old man. And it's like, I wouldn't prefer you to be abusive and still funny. Like, I don't want that. But I have an easier time, I guess, defending Louis C.K. than Chappelle because, like, I'm coming at it from a point of view of joke writing ability and, you know, longevity. You know, Louis C.K., I think, has been going for 37 years, and he's getting better. He's just getting better. Like, not maybe, like, on a straight trajectory,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like he is fucking brilliant, and it sucks at whatever, but I don't know. I can't ignore him as a comedian. I don't want to.
Yeah.
But you can definitely say in the same breath, like, I wouldn't want to be alone with him in a room. Sorry.
Yeah,
like,
fair
but
enough.
like, and I don't, it's so bad that the amount of toxicity and like what we allow and what we forgive. But I don't know, as like a bread and butter comedian, like I can't forgive Chappelle's bad joke writing. Like for the number of years that he's been going and the people who he's surrounded by, like, to write better jokes. You hire someone to write better jokes for you if you can't do it yourself, Like I remember, do you know Patrice O'Neill?
Yeah.
So like, I'm a huge Patrice O'Neill fan. He was a blatant misogynist and sexist. He said some horrible things about women, but it was like, I always kind of saw it through the lens of comedy, not through the lens of being a woman. And I know that that's a problem for a lot of people. And I think a lot of like female comics and a lot of women too are just like, fuck that guy, he's a sexist. And even like Norm Macdonald has said some like horribly sexist stuff before he died. But like Patrice and Norm, like, again, they're institutions of comedy. I can't ignore the foundation blocks of what built the fucked up house that we all live in that we call comedy. That's the reality we're living in. Should we forgive Bill Cosby? Absolutely not. But we can't deny that he was like there at the beginning of stand-up. Yeah. It's really hard. It's really, really hard, And like music suffers the same kind of thing where, what are we just not going to play Michael Jackson anymore? Are we just going to take that off the radio forever? No. Do we forgive it? Do we stop having these conversations and telling these stories? No, we continue. We hold both things at the same time. It sucks. I just like it really sucks. But I will say, you look at like the female comedy institutions, not a lot of toxicity there. I will say, like, not a lot of the older female, comics of our, the last 50, 60 years. You don't hear a lot of stories of them being, creeps on the phone or molesting anyone. I'm just saying, just saying, I think we tend to come out on top. But that's maybe just my unbiased opinion.
Well, again, I guess it's not just an opinion. At this moment, it's factually accurate because of the. Also, again, that probably has to do as well with the fact that it's, like you said, it's a male-populated field, and historically it's been more predominant, and it still is more predominant. And I was just thinking about this whole thing that you said we were talking about earlier with again, like I said, they were the pillars, and I think sometimes I think about the way of because you said music, theater, like every single industry, because in the end of like any sort of art form, it's actually taken from the world. And I always think, well, people do creepy things. Comedians, some of them, do creepy things, have weird views or whatever. But then again, I think the reason why they it's just the way it is, because again, ultimately it's humans, that do that. And I agree. Sometimes it's really hard because that's the thing with me, like with Louis C.K. I think I've listened to his last to the album, but I was spiteful, I was like, oh,
hate
this
listening.
like, this is good, but it's a shame it's him.
It's frustrating.
It's frustrating, but
totally.
It's really hard. It's such a strange. Yeah, that's what I see, that I had, like, the double standards that I live by. And I think everyone, to an extent, does. But
yeah, and I think, we're also sort of in a kind of era now of like, great, okay, so let's not do this anymore. That's, let's not even, leave the past, not leave the past, but like, let's look to the future and how we want to have these institutions behave moving forward. And like, I think a big part of that is visibility in the community. So, I was in Amsterdam for 2 years doing stand-up, and like, it's a really unique scene because almost at every level there are women. So there are female producers, there are female showrunners, there are female headliners. It's not a big scene, so it's kind of easy to see like space for that. And as a result, there's just more, there are more balanced lineups. There's more transparency in terms of bad behavior, and more accountability. And like, I'm not saying comedy should be like a fucking police state, but when you have more balance of like genders and people of color and people with disabilities and queer people, like you begin to sort of live in an ecosystem that actually represents our real ecosystem. And I make this complaint a lot when I'm on club lineups in London, because it was shocking to me when I got here that like I was doing Fridays and Saturdays at big clubs and I would be like one of two women on a lineup. And it's like, that's so surprising to me because, 95% of the audience isn't male. So why is the lineup? Like, it's not reflective of the people that are coming out to comedy. Women are coming to comedy. So why aren't women being seen doing comedy? Like, it doesn't click for me. There are female comedians. There are great female comedians in this scene that like do not get the kind of stage time that they should, because there is still this inherent bias. And I think that like, moving forward in an ideal world, it wouldn't even be, protect women, like we must be careful around the men. No, it's like, no, we're just going to be like adults about this and operate in an adult environment where you can't get away with being shitty. You can't get away with being a creep. Yeah, I don't know. I was referencing Amsterdam just because it was like, it was the most unique city I've ever done comedy in, because it was just, I never felt unsafe. I never felt like, why am I the only woman on this? Like, it was just rare for me to be the only woman on a lineup. Like, it's cool. I think we're entering into a time where maybe those days are kind of not behind us, but like slowly we're going into a space. And I don't mean like every comedy lineup should be 50% men and 50% women, and there should be black people and Asian people, and like, but no, not at all. I'm just saying, like, moving towards a place of like more of a reflective lineup of what our society looks like. Because like, I, as a white woman, a white cis straight woman, like, I can only have so many diverse opinions, before I'm fucking not gaslight. What's the word I'm looking for? Virtue signaling, like I can't speak on behalf of like a black woman's experience, and I wouldn't want to. A black woman needs to do that, so, but it has to come from the top down. And in London, like, there are very few showrunners and club owners that are female. Like, that's just the reality that we're in. And so I think there's still a bit of a struggle to see that kind of range. Interestingly though, like, I find it's in the middle that's the tough spot. So like in the amateur scene, there's a lot of diversity and there's a lot of different shades, like male, female, queer, disabled, whatever, in the very, very bottom. And at the top, I would say that there's a lot of visibility and diversity. But it's in the middle, like where I live, that it's just still very white and it's still very masculine heavy. Surprising. It was really surprising to me when I got here. I think it's changing. I think it's constantly changing. But like, I think we will only see a true reduction in shitty behavior the more, and obviously like women do shitty stuff too. I've just never heard of it in comedy. Like, I just haven't seen it yet outside of my own shitty behavior.
I also was thinking whether, the fact that without being in Netherlands, no, actually, I went through Netherlands, but I haven't actually been visiting or anything. But I know that it's still, I mean, it's always, or at least it has a history of being like inclusive, in many aspects. So I also thought, because I was even thinking about what you said now with, for example, because I grew up in Romania and everyone that was on TV was probably like male comedians. Like, we had a couple of, actually we used to have like duo acts where it was like a male and a female. And then obviously in England, I think it's because those were the pillars that were set in, like when you start something new and you start, not new, but when that was like the beginning. While now I think it can feel, I mean, look, it feels overwhelming at times doing it as I'm a straight, white cis male. However, even as a foreigner, I'm like, this is a bit, like, what's happening here? So I think that's where it starts getting hard, because when every time, like I think even now when I look at like emailing promoters or speaking with actually I do find it really beautiful that at times when I message like PR agents and stuff like this, and I was like, oh, actually, she, her, was pronounced. I was like, oh, okay, good, and it feels like nice, but yeah, I think that's that comedy wise and stuff, and I've seen like I think most of the people, it's not to say, because I met some of the people that I met that have been in comedy for like years. They are the loveliest people I've ever met. But you do see the difference, and I feel like it can't feel overwhelming, and it's really interesting for you because again, when you have the background of loads of countries, or like again more than one country of doing comedy, and you kind of like, oh, okay, so I've seen that. And also wondering, because obviously you were talking about Netherlands, but what about like Canada? Was it more like Netherlands or was it more like UK?
I would say it's definitely more like the UK in terms of size. Like the Toronto stand-up scene is massive. There's a ton of comedians. There's a ton of shows. There's JFL, which is like the offshoot of Just for Laughs in Montreal, is in Toronto. It's the big festival. But it's big like London, but then it's sort of similar to the Netherlands in the diversity spectrum. Like I was coming up in the Toronto scene in like 2014, 2015, and even then the queer comedy scene was really taking off. So like I would say we were even kind of like neck and neck with New York in terms of like queer visibility, trans visibility, which was like I think a decade ahead of the UK and like definitely a lot of American cities, which was really exciting for me because it was like I felt there was ample space for me. I didn't feel like I needed to kind of like squeeze my way into this like male dominated industry. Definitely not that at all. It was, in fact, it was like, oh, like I'm not diverse enough. Like I'm a white woman. Like there's already so many white women, what's my angle? And I never even talked about being Jewish until I moved to the Netherlands. Cause in Canada, like no one fucking cares. Like that's not unique. It's not special, for a host of reasons, but like, it was really interesting to me to see so many female producers in Toronto. And then I became a female producer. I think as a result of seeing it around me, I was like, well, I can run my own show. This doesn't seem to be like so political or complicated. And it was encouraged, I think, by like, other members of the community as a way to, introduce yourself to the scene, to be like, cool, I'm a comedian, I've got like 7 minutes of like decent material, but what I am bringing to the table is a show that I really work my butt off to produce, and I'm gonna have great comics on and sell lots of tickets. And like that was a really interesting way in. And it's funny because like, several years later coming to London, like producing a show is the last thing I would want to do. Like, I am tired. Like I can't, and I would love to, like obviously there's room for it here, but it's different. It's like a lot more, I want to say like kind of cutthroat here than it is in Toronto. Even though the competition is super high in Toronto and the avenues for progression are a lot less in Toronto, you either have to do the festivals or you have to get a writing gig on TV to sort of like move up in the world. There's not as many opportunities as there seem to be in the UK. But it is kind of, it never felt as like go, 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 go as it does in London. Like people here, I think at the level I'm at are really like, I'm working on my 20 and I'm headlining at this club, and like I've got a debut at Fringe this year, and it's like serious. People take it really serious here, which is great. Like that's the environment I want to be in. Whereas in Toronto, I think it's more like, yeah, I'm going to do comedy for the rest of my life, but it's going to be alongside my barista job, my nanny job, my dog walking job. And that's just the reality. It's like, people here seem to have fewer jobs. like comedy is a job for a lot of people here, which is like so exciting to see, so inspiring.
I think it's brilliant because and I was even looking at starting in Manchester and coming down to London, and I feel like London is really it's hard, but it's beautiful because I think the I guess the even I want to say cultural shock of moving from Manchester to London, and then Manchester was like, okay, like you're an up and coming, you're doing open mics, you're doing like amateur nights, and then everyone's like, oh my god, well done. That's beautiful. Whatever you say is beautiful.
Yeah.
And then you come to London and you do like, for example, a gong show or whatever, and then or even like you do an open mic, and there are some audience members are like, nah.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh god, and then you have to do it again and again, and I guess in here it's kind of like I generally feel like it's like going to the gym, even though I hate going to the gym, but I think that's why I like comedy, because you have to get
your reps in.
Yeah, you gotta get your reps in.
Don't skip leg day.
Yeah, because otherwise you're like, what's happening?
Yeah.
It's again, it's hard, but I think that's what makes it more beautiful.
Totally. And it's like what we were talking about in the beginning, like where it's like you're logging hours, like you want to be, if you want to be good at crowd work, get up on stage every single night. Like there's no shortcut to it. And it's, I listen to like all these comedy podcasts, and all these pros have the exact same advice. It's like, if you want to do the best way to get better at stand-up is to do stand-up all the freaking time, because you can't fake that comfort on stage. You can't fake that confidence. And audiences smell it a mile away when you're scared, when you're intimidated, when you're new. I took about 3 weeks off over Christmas while I was home. And then I did my first show back while I was in Toronto. And it was like, I felt like such a baby comedian. I was talking so fast and I wasn't listening to the audience. And I was like, this is what it's like to be a little baby. Just talk, and like no real confidence, like faking my way through it. And it was just like, you got to remember, they can smell fear.
Like that's like a predator waiting for the prey.
Totally, sharks in the water, and they want it. Like it's a toxic environment, the stand-up comedy club, because like they want to laugh, but they want to kind of. There's a maliciousness to it, There are very few comedians who do this well, where it's like their material isn't cutting, they don't swear, it's joyful. Like, Maria Bamford, I would say, is like a really good example of a comedian who, like, her stuff is dark, but it's not mean, There's like a real joy, and like Ron Funch is another great example who like does this like finds the joy in life and finds a way to make that funny. And it's like, oh man, that's so much better than like my suicide jokes. Would love to just not do that for once.
I find, with that, because I had and I've seen it last year, where I was having a very difficult time, and I wasn't seeking any support, and then I was doing comedy nights because I thought that would fix me, and it was just sad. Like, when you were when you were talking about the thing before, where you're like, oh, you're on stage and you see the audience feeling sad for you, and then it just worse and worse, and they're like almost worried. My experience was like that, where I'd be like, oh yeah, like how funny is this? And everyone was like,
it's not.
Oh my god, I hope she's okay.
Yeah.
And now that I still, again, I write some stuff, and I have some very serious, I guess, topics, but I just try to like put it in like such a nice way. People are like, haha, funny.
You want to take the pressure off.
Yeah, because it's so much pressure when you go to someone and like, so we're going to talk about suicide, and then you see them,
they're like, but I don't want to talk about suicide. Like, I'm fine. I'm not suicide. You fucking figure that out, man. Don't put that on me. That's crazy.
Exactly. And I feel like that sometimes I see it on stage where people are like, oh, well, I one of the things I find, and I think it's like one of those, when people say, oh, I'm OCD like that, just because they like to like clean their room or something. I hate it when people go, oh, well, I guess I'm just going to go home and kill myself. And I was like, unless you're going to do it, don't mention it.
Yeah. I've been talking about this a lot recently with other comics. It's like, it's such a cop-out to be like, this set isn't going well, I'm going to go home and kill myself. It's like, first of all, you're not. And second of all, like, don't reduce that, because some people do go home and kill themselves. Like, I don't think it's something we should really be joking about. That's not to say you can't write jokes about suicide. You absolutely can. But it's like, I wouldn't go there, because I'm not a suicidal person, and I know that there are probably people in the audience who are, and it does a disservice to their experience for me to be like, I'm gonna write a fucking dick joke about suicide and like blah blah. It's like, why? That's not something I'm facing.
Yeah.
And I'm not smart enough to fake my way through that. It's the same thing. Like I talk about like, I've never had an abortion, so I've never written an abortion joke. Like it's not my area. Do I believe in the rights for access? Of course. And like, I could write a joke about that. But in terms of your lived experience, you can kind of tell when a comedian is like really hamming it up to be like, it's like you do have a life. I'm sure you can find something interesting about your real life that you don't need to dip into the darkest possible thing that isn't even your true experience to mine for material.
I think with that, because it's actually linked to something that I heard you saying earlier, and it was amazing. I'm actually going to write it down for myself, because when you were talking about how, like, what is it that, like, my uniqueness, and you were talking about, well, okay, cool, there are like women who do comedy, but I'm going to be the woman who has like her own show, and then I thought about, again, sometimes like you said, look, if you have a brilliant idea about a joke that, say, has nothing to do with you, but then you have to, I guess, showcase, at least in my opinion, showcase in a joke what's your, like, specifically, what is it that you think that makes that unique, rather than, again, just throwing something that's been addressed or said or whatever. But again, you can still, because I find that, I think, and what I love, like political comedians, like topical comedians, where they talk about things that I talked about on the way to the show because I've seen it on the news. But then I want to see what does, again, like Zoe specifically thinks or has to say, rather than, here is like a blanket approach of that. But what I was gonna talk about as well, because obviously you said you've done this like for a while, and how you find the changes now. Like, what's it like to do comedy, I guess, in like 2024? Like, what's it like? Again, you talk a lot about we'll talk about a lot, but we talked about your hour. We got that happening. You've been in England for 2 years. So yeah, what's the changes that you've noticed? Like, that's when I started comedy, as like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So what it's been like for you in these 2 years, and what you're looking forward, I guess, like what's happening forward?
Yeah. Changes. I mean, I think the accessibility and the interest in comedy has blown up in the last few years, like especially during COVID. People, like, comedy became really mainstream, I think, in the last 5 years. When I started, 10 years ago, it was like still kind of like an alternative form of entertainment, and you kind of had to seek it out, and social media wasn't like such a big thing. So it was like a bit more underground, a little like it was, it's mainstream, sure, since the 90s, but like it's really at the forefront now, where like normal people who aren't even comedy fans are watching Netflix specials, and it's on these devices, like it's on social media, it's on Netflix, on Amazon, it's so accessible to the public. So that has changed things in terms of like mining for unique perspective. I think you have to be really careful about like not overlapping and not saying something that's already been said. Like, every time I think I've come up with a great new idea for a joke, I have to look it up and make sure no one else has covered it already. Because it's like, I don't want to be repetitive. I don't want to sound like anybody else. So that means like it's been, I guess, a bit more like I have to do a bit more research, like it's more research intensive, which I don't mind. I really like, reading and sort of like looking at things from different angles before I talk about it on stage. I think for me, like a big change has just been like, not even a change, but I am getting closer and closer to being myself on stage and talking in my own voice, and that element of sort of relaxation, because, I get the best response from an audience when I'm having fun and when I feel safe and comfortable. But getting to that point, it's a lot harder than people think. Like it's not just a switch you can flick on. If you're having a bad day, if you're not feeling the crowd, if you're, worried about XYZ, like it can be really challenging to sort of just like take a breath, be in the moment, be in the space, listen to the room. I've been doing like a lot of like improv and clown workshops for that reason alone, just to like relearn how to be in the moment, because I think stand-up can really harden you and make you very rigid and be like, these are my jokes, premise, setup, punchline, premise, setup, punchline. It's like audiences don't like that. Like, I'm not Mitch Hedberg. I don't have crazy golden one-liners. I have little micro stories and little kind of ideas and subjects that I want to touch on. But in order to get you to listen to that, I need you to like me and I need you to feel safe with me. So, and the fastest way to that is to just be like, here we are in this room. How are you? I'm going to speak now. Please don't talk. It's very simple. It's very small. But if you skip that step, like people they tune out. They just will not come with you. So that's something that's constantly changing for me.
This is, oh my God, I love this so much, because this is one of the reasons why I do this. It's such a beautiful.
Don't tell anyone
statement.
that I do improv.
Yeah, and it's so, it's incredible. But is there anything you want to say before we wrap it up? Is that where do people find you?
Yeah,
and
listen, my mom would be really happy if you followed me on Instagram. She is constantly shocked at how few followers I have. So please follow me on Instagram. It's at Zoe Brownstone. I'm on TikTok, but I'm not on TikTok, so you can follow me there. But it's pretty old. And I'm working on this new hour. So if you're in the UK, I'm doing it at the Leicester Comedy Festival in February, and I might be at Hastings, and I'll hopefully be in Edinburgh this August. So come to the hour, because I don't know what it is yet, and it's fun to do it in front of strangers. It's very it's the most kind of vulnerable thing I've ever done before. So if you want to see that, you should come.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been great. What a good chat.
I'm glad you enjoyed. Yeah. Well, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Cool. So, how good was that? How good was this episode? Well, thank you all for listening. And the good news that I mentioned, the exciting news that I mentioned in regards to our listeners at the beginning of the podcast is that at the moment I'm looking on a way to, integrate the listeners into the podcast, because the whole idea around this, I don't really know what it is, to be honest, whether it's a mental health. I'd like to think it's a comedy or comedy infused podcast, but most importantly, the reason why I've started doing Borderline Podcast Disorder, it's so that it builds up what I hope to be a community of some sort, where people can be open and get involved and just feel like, there is some sort of hope, I guess, at the end of, not even at the end of it, just throughout the tunnel. And for that, I am looking at ways to, integrate the listeners, maybe with... but look, if anyone... For now, basically what I'm going to say is that if anyone has any stories that they want to share, whether anonymously, just write me. Just send it via email or message to me, and I'll read it out on the podcast. And we'll take it from there. But for now... that's it for this week. Thank you again for listening, and stick around for what's coming next, because it's looking good. So, take care for now. Bye.